It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
And let's go. We're now smoking with the best.
All right, on a week and a weekend filled with tons and tons of news, it's an appropriate time right after midnight to chat with Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave, it was kind of a busy week, but last night it just got crazy with UFC 199.
Last night was nuts, and it's going to be nuts for the next couple of days.
Yep.
It's not even win and lose. Win and lose is important, of course, but what if he gets hurt? Because you can get hurt in this. He gets hurt and misses SummerSlam. That's what they don't want.
Exactly. That's the more dangerous aspect of this whole thing.
And here's the other thing. Think about this one also. Let's just say, a lot of these guys, when there's a fight, you'll see it in the stories. I mean, it's like you'll have these medical suspensions that say like 30 days no contact, 60 days no contact, right? So they don't want you sparring. Well, a pro wrestling match, it's not sparring, but in some ways it's worse than sparring in the sense that you're taking big bumps and things like that in sparring and light sparring you're really not taking. So, if you're on a medical suspension from sparring, now theoretically, should you be doing pro wrestling? No. Now, will WWE adhere to that? They don't have to. They're not regulated by commissions. But it's just an interesting. It's a real interesting thing, and I'm just surprised again that I'm really surprised Brock's doing it, even though obviously there's millions being thrown at him, and at 30, almost 39 years old, I think he's looking at the fact that hey, I can make. I can double this year's income now, by doing at this stage in my career, that's not too bad by doing one UFC.
Dave, I think the big concern in regards to the injury would be a knockout and a possible concussion coming out of that. That is something that WWE seems to be taking at high priority now,
right?
And is very worried about.
That could happen. That could happen too. I mean, he could tear a muscle. I mean, or something like that. But yeah, the knockout is the most likely bad situation, and if there's a knockout, I mean, how long, would he not be able to wrestle? I mean, SummerSlam, touch and go, knockout. Sometimes you recover fast enough, but my thought is if you have a knockout in a fight as opposed to just a concussion in the that type of a thing. I mean, it definitely would put SummerSlam at risk.
So what with Brock going over to UFC. What's WWE getting in return for this? I mean, I know they had Ronda up here a couple of years ago at WrestleMania, but there's got to be something happening here.
It's either money or it's somebody at next year's WrestleMania. I mean, if that's how the deal is going to go down, if there's going to be a trade, and that would be Ronda or Conor would be the ones that he would want. I mean, or maybe I don't think that he would want John Jones unless John Jones got super hot in the next year. I know John Jones would love to do it. In the past, John Jones's people have pushed John Jones to WWE, and WWE hasn't shown interest because they don't know who he is enough. But Ronda and Conor are the big names, and obviously in different ways. Obviously, we all know Conor's a wrestling fan, even though he doesn't act like he is. And Ronda, we know, would love to do it if she would have clearance. And I think that at that point, I think that Dana would certainly owe them one to give Ronda clearance for WrestleMania. I would think.
Okay, so that's kind of the UFC situation there. Now, another surprise debut on television this week was Bill Goldberg appearing in the ad for 2K17. We've seen this happen before. Goldberg's status right now, is it simply the video game?
Simply the video game, but I just remember. Anyway, you probably already talked about it. Sting and
Warrior
and Brock Lesnar, all of them were in the video game, and then they ended up signing. And it usually is like towards the latter part of the year. I think Sting was like November, and actually he didn't even sign when he first appeared. But Sting was in like November when they made the deal, and I think Warrior was around December for the hall where they made the thing. So we're kind of a couple months away. When what seems to happen is that when these guys, because the guys in that role in the video game, like Goldberg, part of his job is going to be to go out and promote the video game. He's going to be running around a lot, and in the course of running around, he's going to be running around and running into Triple H and Vince and other people from the company. And it's just a logical thing that we're all there and we all have a common goal.
Yep.
And it's like, Goldberg has already done interviews where he's pretty much saying, about the problems in the past. It's like, well, we're older and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's taking the tact of reconciliation, and He's talking like he wants to do something, and they're not really big Bill Goldberg fans, but they are big business fans, and they are, and again, one of the things at WrestleMania is you want that new thing. So there's a lot of reasons why Bill, and again, the Bill Goldberg DVD that they released a couple of years ago did so much better than anyone expected. So there is an interest in their fan base in Bill Goldberg, and he's one of the few people from that era that never, he hasn't been there in, since '04, right? So it's like 12 years. So logic will tell you that they probably should make a deal. That doesn't mean they will, but I think that, if I'm going to bet, I'm going to bet they will.
One of the other big news stories of the week, Dave, tragic loss to the sporting world. I mean, I can't think of one person in the world that wouldn't have been affected by this guy, and that's the passing of Muhammad Ali. And, someone that, a lot of people, he's a great boxer and stuff. A lot of people don't know about his connections to pro wrestling, both an influence on wrestling and influenced by pro wrestling himself.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Muhammad Ali was, this has really hit me. I think it hit everybody that was around in the 70s hard because he was, maybe like, he was
childhood hero for me.
Childhood hero of everyone, especially from the mid 70s on when he was when he became really popular.
Yep.
But but like a symbol, much bigger than sports. A symbol of negativity, race relations, and then turning that all around, and his I couldn't even come up with like a cultural equivalent since Muhammad Ali to Muhammad Ali, because you talk about Messi or Michael Jordan or something, and they're even Mike Tyson. These guys were all gigantic, but I don't think any of them were close.
And none of them had the conflict earlier in their careers where almost the entire country hated the guy, and because he wouldn't go to Vietnam, and then by like you said, by the 70s, he's the biggest hero ever.
Well, he was even before he wouldn't go to Vietnam because I think the people didn't like his cockiness. He had that Conor McGregor thing, and Conor McGregor. Look at a perfect example of. Someone who is so completely influenced by Muhammad Ali, and everyone though, even the ones that don't even know it because they were influenced by Billy Graham or Dusty Rhodes,
right?
That's the indirect thing, right? Because Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes took everything. They took their they put their own fingerprints on it, but their act was generated by Ali, and Ali, of course, came from Gorgeous George or Fred Blassie, probably both.
Yeah.
More likely Fred Blassie than George, even though everything you'll read will say George. His style is closer to Blassie, and I just remember in '76 when they put Blassie with him.
On The Tonight Show.
Well, not just The Tonight Show, but all across. Vince McMahon's father, decided that, he, for whatever reason, he was going to have, Muhammad Ali was going to be managed by Fred Blassie, and they had enough pull with the American side of the pay-per-view. And the Japanese loved it because Fred Blassie was a cultural icon in Japan, and they wanted someone who could run around and do the pro wrestling interviews when Ali was busy doing what he was doing, and Freddie Blassie was a good talker. So they put them together, and Ali looks at him and goes, "You're the guy, you're the guy."
Yeah.
And Blassie goes, "I know I'm the guy. Why do you always say Gorgeous George?" And he goes, "You're the guy." And then for that whole year, it was like Freddie Blassie was the guy, he copied. And then in 1977, for the rest of his life, it was Gorgeous George again.
Dave, another thing that's popped up, you talked about that 1976 match with Antonio Inoki, and I'd heard you speak of the fact that this is, of course, a wrestler versus a boxer, which was supposed to be a work fight, but got a little bit weird within the fight. Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, they were supposed to do, Inoki has done so many of these worked things, which, is commonplace in Japan. So many guys from Takada and Maeda and all those guys really made big reputations of being tough guys through worked fights against, martial artists from other sports before there was a UFC and a Pride and things like that. But the Ali Inoki match was supposed to be, Ali was supposed to lose to Inoki. He was going to get $6 million to lose. And then the week of the fight, for whatever reason, he
changed his mind.
Feelings, and it was just like, I can't throw a fight, type of thing. So everything kind of fell apart. They went into a fight, and it was a real fight. It was a terrible fight.
It was terrible, yeah.
You know, I mean, they were both scared to death, I think, of each other, because I think Inoki didn't want to get knocked out because, you know, he didn't have anything to compete with the boxer hand speed-wise. And Ali, I think he knew he was not a wrestler, and he could be taken down by a wrestler. So they made all these rules. I don't even remember the rules, but I just remember, like, the week that it happened when the new rules all came up, and I was just like, oh, my God, Inoki's got no chance. And then Inoki spent the whole fight laying on his back, his legs.
Yeah.
It was awful. But, you know, now, you know, it's one of those weird things where it's like this awful match. I remember it because I was there, you know, watching it.
Yeah.
But years later in Japan, it's, you know, Muhammad Ali fought Antonio Inoki, and it is probably one of the 3 or 4 most famous matches of all time, and it's thought of as the birth of mixed martial arts, actually.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Very strange. Well, Dave, it's obviously there's a lot to report on in regards to you know, all the stuff that happened last night in the Observer this week, and on top of that, we're leading into Slammiversary next week.
Oh, geez, wow.
We also got NXT TakeOver.
Yes, TakeOver,
which
as
will
well.
be much better than Slammiversary.
So we're going to be talking about that. Any specials in the Observer this week to look forward to?
I think that I think the Brock Lesnar stuff pretty much is going to cover a lot of it. And then, you know, Conor and Diaz signing.
That's right.
And Michael Bisping. I tell you what, that's another thing real quick is poor Michael Bisping.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like what a great story the whole Michael Bisping thing is, and it just got buried between Brock Lesnar, Conor McGregor, Ariel Helwani, and everything else.
Yeah.
Of you know, just where it became like it should have been like the big headline of the weekend that this guy, after all this time, wins the championship, a guy that nobody ever even thought of as being like a top 3 or 4 contender, and, you know, and beats a real good fighter to do it. And because of everything else that happened, it's kind of like, you know, the 5th story of the night.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. But we have been celebrating on the show, and we'll read about that in the Observer. And next week, we will chat with you about Slammiversary.
Brother Meltzer.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about other things, too.
All right, Dave. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, have a great week.
Great, you too. Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find all that we just talked about.